The unlikely guardian. When the assistant became a goddess. Prepare for a jaw-dropping transformation. What if the person you least expect holds a secret that will turn their world, and yours, upside down? This is a story of power, prejudice, and a stunning revelation that will leave you breathless. Before we dive in, do you believe first impressions are always true?
Hey my beautiful family, welcome to A Story a Day. I'll bring you powerful and deeply loving story.
Are you seriously inviting her? Camila Vargas crossed her arms, looking at Javier Soto with that smile he knew too well. Don't tell me you're turning charitable. Javier didn't even look up from his documents. Isabella Luna, his assistant, was organizing files near his desk, pretending not to listen. It's the firm's annual party, he replied coldly. All employees are invited. All important employees, Camila corrected, raising her voice just enough for Isabella to hear. Or is your assistant going to understand what we adults talk about? The other partners chuckled. Isabella gripped the papers in her hands but remained silent. Camila's right, interjected Ramiro Mendoza, one of the senior partners. People of our class don't mix with, well, you know. Javier finally looked up. For a second, his eyes met Isabella's. She looked at him without pleading, without hope, only with that silent dignity he had never understood. Isabella, he said, his voice harsher than he intended. You are cordially invited to the party this Saturday. I hope you know how to behave. The silence grew heavy. Isabella carefully placed the files on the desk, as if they were made of glass. Thank you, Senor Soto, she replied, emotionless. I will consider your invitation. Camila let out a laugh. Consider? Do you have something better to do on a Saturday night? Isabella turned to her. Her dark eyes sparkled for an instant. I always have options, Senorita Vargas. It's just that some aren't worth my time. Camila's smile froze. The partners exchanged uncomfortable glances. Well, Javier murmured, clearing his throat. That's settled then. Isabella gathered her things without haste. When she reached the door, she paused. One question, Senor Soto. Does this invitation come with any particular intention? Javier felt his throat go dry. The others awaited his response. Just, we want everyone to have a good time. He lied. Isabella nodded slowly. I understand. Have a good afternoon. The door closed softly behind her. Camila burst into laughter. My God! Did you see her? Like an offended queen. It's going to be fun, Ramiro added. Watching her try to fit in with us. Javier said nothing. He stared at the door where Isabella had exited, with a strange feeling in his chest he couldn't identify. A sister's wisdom. That night, Isabella arrived at her small apartment completely exhausted. Her younger sister, Sophia, was studying at the dining table. How was your day? Sophia asked without looking up from her books. Isabella collapsed onto the sofa. I was invited to the company party. Sophia raised her eyebrows. And is that good or bad? Bad. Very bad. Why? Isabella closed her eyes. She could still hear Camila's laughter, see the mocking glances of the partners. Because they didn't invite me to include me, Sophia. They invited me to humiliate me. Her sister put down her pencil and approached the sofa. Isabella, look at me. Isabella opened her eyes. Sophia had that serious expression she used when she wanted to give important advice. What do you want to do? Stay home. Pretend I'm sick. Is that what you really want? Isabella sighed. No. I want to go and prove them wrong about me. But I'm afraid of making a fool of myself. Sophia sat beside her. Sister, you've worked 3 years at that firm. You've seen how they behave, how they talk, how they move in their world. Do you think you can't do the same? They were born into that world. I wasn't. But you're smarter than all of them put together. Sophia took her hand. And you have something they'll never have. What? Real class. Not the kind you buy with money, but the kind you carry in your soul. Isabella felt her eyes well up with tears. What if I'm wrong? What if I only confirm what they already think of me? Sophia squeezed her hand. Then you'll be wrong with your head held high. But, Isabella, you've always been bigger than that place. It's time for them to realize it. Isabella remained silent, looking out the window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Javier and Camila were in their world of luxury. Sure that she wouldn't dare to show up. Maybe it was time to surprise them. The grand entrance. On Saturday night, the ballroom of the city's most exclusive hotel buzzed with elegant conversations and rehearsed laughter. Javier adjusted his tie for the 10th time, glancing towards the entrance every few minutes. Waiting for someone, Camila appeared beside him, radiant in a golden dress that had cost more than Isabella's monthly salary. Just checking that everything's in order, he lied, taking a sip of whiskey. Relax, amor. Your little assistant surely stayed home watching telenovelas. Camila laughed. It's obvious she wasn't going to come. Ramiro approached with 2 other partners, all with drinks in hand. Still waiting for the show? He asked sarcastically. I bet she doesn't even have a decent dress. Or maybe she's coming in her office uniform. Another added, provoking laughter. Javier forced a smile, but something in his stomach twisted. A part of him hoped Isabella wouldn't come, to avoid the humiliation they had all planned. Another part wanted to see what would happen if she dared. Ladies and gentlemen, the master of ceremonies announced, dinner is served. The guests began to move towards the main dining room. Javier was walking alongside Camila when the murmur of conversations abruptly ceased. He turned towards the entrance and felt the air leave his lungs. Isabella stood in the doorway, completely motionless. She wore a classic red dress, simple but perfectly cut, that enhanced her figure without exaggeration. Her dark hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders. She wore no flashy jewelry, only small earrings that sparkled discreetly. Her eyes calmly swept the room, as if she owned the place. Silence stretched for seconds that felt eternal. Some guests looked at her with curiosity, others with poorly disguised surprise. Isabella began to walk. Her steps were confident, measured. She didn't look at the floor or seem nervous. She moved as if she had been born in ballrooms like this. My God! Someone whispered behind Javier. Who is that woman? Camila had paled, her hand clinging to Javier's arm. She whispered. It's impossible. How can she look like that? Isabella approached the main group. When she stood before Javier, she gave a slight nod. Good evening, Señor Soto. Thank you for the invitation. Her voice sounded serene, polite. None of the timidity she displayed in the office. Isabella. Javier could barely articulate her name. You look different. She smiled, and that smile completely transformed her face. Different? I just put on a dress, Señor Soto. Nothing more. Ramiro coughed uncomfortably. Yes, well, what a surprise to see you here. Surprise. Isabella looked directly at him. You didn't expect me to come, Señor Mendoza? No, of course not. I mean, Camila interrupted, regaining her composure. Ramiro means we're delighted to have you here, although I must say that dress looks interesting. Did you buy it especially for the occasion? The venom in her voice was evident, but Isabella didn't flinch. Actually, I've had it for years. Sometimes simple things are the most elegant, don't you think? Camila narrowed her eyes. Isabella had just politely told her that her golden dress was vulgar. Of course, Camila replied with a forced smile. Although I suppose for someone in your position it must be difficult to know exactly what to wear to these events. You're right, Isabella nodded. Fortunately, elegance isn't bought with money. You either have it or you don't. A murmur went through the group. Several guests had approached to listen to the conversation. Isabella had responded to Camila's attack without raising her voice, without losing her smile, but her message had been clear. Javier watched the scene as if hypnotized. This was not the shy, silent Isabella from the office. This woman had a presence that filled the space, a confidence that didn't need to shout to be noticed. Isabella, a voice behind her said. Everyone turned. An older man, elegantly dressed, approached with a genuine smile.
Señor Dubois,
Isabella lit up. What a surprise to see you here. My dear Isabella. The man kissed her on both cheeks. When I saw your name on the guest list, I couldn't believe it. You work with these gentlemen. Javier frowned. Pierre Dubois was one of Europe's most important investors, an occasional client of the firm. I'm Senor Soto's assistant, Isabella replied naturally. Assistant. Dubois looked at Javier in surprise. Do you know who this young woman is, Javier? Javier shook his head, feeling increasingly confused. Isabella was the coordinator of the literacy program we funded in Paris 3 years ago. Her project helped over 1,000 immigrant families. An extraordinary woman. The group fell into complete silence. Isabella just smiled modestly. It was an honor to work on that project, Senor Dubois. And she spoke perfect French, the man continued. Isabella, you must tell me what you're doing now. Are you still working on social programs? Camila looked like she had seen a ghost. Ramiro had stopped smiling. Javier realized that he knew absolutely nothing about the woman who had been his assistant for 3 years. Isabella Luna had just changed all the rules of the game, and the night was just beginning. What do you think will happen next? How will Isabella's past redefine her present? Share your predictions in the comments. And if you're enjoying this thrilling story, smash that like button and subscribe for more amazing content. A force of nature. Dinner passed in a tense atmosphere that only Isabella seemed not to notice. Camila had managed to strategically seat herself near her, ready to attack at the opportune moment. Isabella, darling, Camila began, deliberately refined as she cut her salmon. It must be fascinating to work with such sophisticated people after coming from such a different environment. Isabella chewed calmly before replying. Are you referring to working with wealthy people after working with poor people? The direct question made several diners stop their forks midair. Well, I wouldn't have put it in such crude terms. Camila laughed nervously. Why not? Poverty isn't a contagious disease, Señorita Vargas, and wealth isn't a guarantee of sophistication. Ramiro coughed. Surely you've had to adapt a lot to work at our firm. On the contrary, Isabella smiled. I've discovered that people are basically the same no matter how much money they have. Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone needs respect. Everyone makes mistakes. What a picturesque perspective, Camila murmured. Though I suppose it's easy to philosophize when others are paying the bills. This time Isabella didn't answer immediately. She took a sip of wine and looked at Camila with genuine curiosity. Have you ever worked, Señorita Vargas? Of course, I've worked. Camila straightened up. I supervise my family's investments. I coordinate charity events. I mean, worked for a paycheck, Isabella clarified softly. Waking up every morning knowing that if you don't, there's no money for rent? The silence became uncomfortable. Isabella continued in a soft voice. I'm not judging you. I'm just saying that every perspective is valid. You see the world from your reality, I from mine. At that moment, a man approached the table. He carried a professional camera hanging from his neck. Excuse the interruption, I'm Marcus Grant, from the Global Times. Could I speak with you for a moment, Señorita Luna? Everyone turned to Isabella, surprised. With me? Isabella seemed genuinely confused. I think you have the wrong person. Are you Isabella Luna, the coordinator of the Books Without Borders project in Paris? Isabella nodded slowly. Perfect. I'm writing an article about successful social inclusion programs. Your project appeared in my research as one of the most effective of the past decade. Camila squeezed her glass so hard that her knuckles turned white. Senor Grant, she interrupted. I believe you're interrupting a private dinner. No problem. Isabella rose gracefully. We can talk right here if the others don't mind. Grant turned on a small recorder. Tell me about the Paris project. How did you get families from 15 different nationalities to participate in a literacy program? Isabella visibly relaxed. For the first time that night, she seemed completely in her element. The key was to understand that education isn't a favor we do for others. It's a right we give back to them. Many of those families had professionals, artists, intellectuals who had lost their degrees when they migrated. Can you give me a specific example? There was a man, Amara, who had been a literature professor in Senegal. In Paris, he sold flowers in the metro. When he discovered he could teach French to other immigrants using African texts that he himself translated, he recovered not only a dignified job, but his identity. Grant nodded, taking notes quickly. And the language aspect? I understand you coordinated sessions in French, Arabic, and English, and Spanish and Wolof when necessary, Isabella added. My grandmother always said that every language you learn turns you into a different person. I believe it turns you into a more complete person. Impressive. Do you speak all those languages? Isabella blushed slightly. I handle the basics well. For in-depth work, I always worked with native speakers. Grant turned to Javier. Señor Soto, you must be very proud to have an employee of this international caliber. Javier cleared his throat. All eyes were on him. Yes, of course. Isabella is very valuable to our firm. What projects do you have her working on now? The question landed like a bomb. Javier couldn't say that Isabella spent her days filing papers and serving coffee. We are evaluating new opportunities to leverage her international experience, he lied. Grant smiled. Excellent. The world needs more initiatives like Senorita Luna's. Could we take some photos? For the next few minutes, Isabella posed for several photographs. She looked natural, comfortable. She answered questions with intelligence and humility. She spoke about her projects without sounding boastful. When Grant left, the table was in absolute silence. Isabella returned to her seat as if nothing had happened. Well, she said, taking her drink. Where were we? Camila looked at her as if she were an alien. Ramiro seemed to have swallowed his tongue. Javier realized that he had spent 3 years working next to an extraordinary woman without even trying to get to know her. And the most disturbing thing of all was that Isabella didn't seem to notice the commotion she had caused. For her, all of this was simply normal. The night was just beginning, but the rules of the game no longer existed. What do you think Javier's realization will mean for Isabella? And for the firm? Share your thoughts below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. The fallout. On Monday morning, Javier arrived at the office 30 minutes late with a headache that threatened to split his skull. He hadn't slept well since the party. The images of Isabella in that red dress, speaking naturally in front of the cameras, replayed in his mind like a broken record. His secretary, Karina, awaited him with a pile of messages and a strange expression. Señor Soto needs to see this, she said, extending her tablet. On the screen, a YouTube video showed Isabella entering the hotel ballroom. The title read, "The Assistant Who Conquered the Elite. Her Story Will Shock You." It already had over 200,000 views. How in the world? Javier sank into his chair. The video went viral last night. It's on all social media. The full interview in the Global Times also came out. Javier played the video. The camera perfectly captured the moment Isabella entered the ballroom and the silence that followed. Then, it showed fragments of her interview with Grant, where she spoke about social projects with evident passion. The comments were overwhelming. What an incredible woman. I wish there were more people like her. Look how the rich people stare at her. They're green with envy. She really has true class. Did you see the blonde's face? Haha. Pure venom. Javier's phone rang. It was Ramiro.
Javier,
Did you see the disaster? We need to talk. Now. 15 minutes later, the 4 main partners were gathered in the boardroom. The atmosphere was heavy. This is a catastrophe. Ramiro paced back and forth. Our firm looks like a nest of elitists who exploit their employees. The phone hasn't stopped ringing, added Diego Herrera, Camila's father, a senior partner. Journalists, activists, even some clients asking what's going on. And all because of your brilliant idea to invite the maid. Herrera snapped at him. What were you thinking? Javier clenched his fists. Isabella is not a maid. She's our executive assistant. Executive assistant? Ramiro let out a bitter laugh. Since when does serving coffee make you an executive? Did you know she speaks 5 languages? That she coordinated international projects before working here? Javier stood up. Did you bother to read her resume once? Her resume? Herrera looked at him with contempt. Javier, we hire people like her to do the dirty work, not to give us moral lessons. At that moment, the door opened. Camila entered like a hurricane, her eyes red and her makeup smeared. This is a disaster, she yelled. I'm being humiliated on all social media. There are memes of my face, Javier. Memes. She dramatically dropped into a chair. My friends aren't talking to me. My stylist says I'd better change my image because mine is already burned. All because of that woman. Camila, calm down. Javier tried to touch her shoulder, but she pulled away. Don't touch me. This is your fault. You invited her. You allowed her to humiliate us. Ramiro seized the moment. Javier, we have to take drastic measures. The firm's image is at stake. What kind of measures? Obviously, Isabella has to go today. Fire her? For what reason? You need a reason? Herrera leaned back in his chair. Find something. Late arrival, error in documents. Whatever. But if you fire her now, Camila intervened, wiping her tears, it's going to look like revenge. The media will make an even bigger scandal. Herrera smiled maliciously. Not if we do it right. A review of her work, some conveniently discovered errors, maybe attitude problems. These things take time. Javier looked at these men he had considered his partners, even his friends. In their faces, he saw something he had never noticed before. Fear. Fear that someone like Isabella could expose them for who they really were. No, he said softly. Pardon. No, we are not firing Isabella. Ramiro straightened up. Javier, don't be naive. This woman is destroying our reputation. Our reputation or our hypocrisy? The silence was tense. Camila looked at him, narrowing her eyes. Do you like that woman, Javier? The question landed like a slap. Javier felt all eyes on him. This has nothing to do with personal preferences. Then prove it. Herrera leaned forward. Prove that your loyalty is still with us. Javier looked out the window. Outside, the city continued its normal rhythm. But inside that office, something fundamental had changed. He could no longer pretend he didn't see the cracks that had always been there. His phone vibrated. A text message from an unknown number. Señor Soto, I'm a journalist from Telemundo. Could we talk about Isabella Luna and the working conditions at your firm? Javier turned off his phone and looked at his partners. I need time to think. We're out of time, Ramiro replied. Either she goes, or this is going to get a lot worse. As he left the boardroom, Javier couldn't help but wonder how he had gotten there. A week ago, his life was predictable, comfortable. Now he felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, and someone had just lit the fuse of a bomb. The problem was, he no longer knew if he wanted to put out the fuse or simply jump. A necessary apology. 2 weeks after the restaurant disaster, Javier tried to maintain normalcy, but the fissures were evident everywhere. Isabella continued working as if nothing had happened. But now the other employees looked at her with a mixture of respect and curiosity that hadn't existed before. The acid test came on a Thursday night. The partners had organized a dinner with potential Japanese investors at the city's most exclusive restaurant. Camila insisted on accompanying Javier, as she always did for important meetings. You need to project stability, she had told him while getting ready in her apartment. After all this scandal, clients need to see that you're still the same. But Javier no longer felt the same. And that night, things spiraled completely out of control. It all began when they arrived at the restaurant. The Japanese investors were already waiting, along with Ramiro and Diego. The introductions were cordial, professional. Javier thought that perhaps the night would pass without incident. He was wrong. Mid-dinner, as they discussed the details of a possible merger with an Asian firm, one of the Japanese casually mentioned having seen Isabella's video. Very impressive, your employee, Señor Soto. In Japan, we highly value people who combine humility with excellence. Camila put down her glass with more force than necessary. Well, you know how these things are on social media. Everything gets greatly exaggerated. The Japanese man looked at her with polite curiosity. Exaggerate? But Señorita Luna's achievements are documented. Her project in Paris was recognized by UNESCO. Diego coughed uncomfortably. Señor Yamamoto, I believe the conversation is straying from the important topics. On the contrary, another investor intervened. A company that harnesses talent regardless of social origin is exactly the kind of firm we want to work with. Camila let out a forced laugh. Please, they talk as if she were Mother Teresa of Calcutta. She's just another employee who got lucky with the cameras. The silence that followed was chilling. The Japanese exchanged glances. Pardon me, said Señor Yamamoto in a controlled voice. But did you just minimize your colleague's professional achievements? Colleague? Camila laughed louder. She's an assistant. Her job is to organize files and serve coffee. I don't see why we have to pretend she's something more. Javier felt the blood rush to his head. Camila, stop. Stop what? Telling the truth. She turned to him, her eyes blazing with anger. We're all pretending that woman is some kind of saint, just because she caused a scandal on social media. Camila, please. No. She stood up, clearly agitated. I'm sick of this. Sick of everyone treating that intruder as if she's special. You know what I think? I think she's trying to steal my place. The Japanese watched the scene with thinly disguised disgust. Ramiro tried to intervene. Camila, perhaps you should. What should I do? Shut up while that woman destroys everything we've built. She turned to Javier. Or have you already forgotten who was with you all these years? Who supported you when you started the firm? Who has been at every event, every important meeting? Javier slowly stood up. Camila, let's go. Now. I'm not going anywhere. These gentlemen need to know the truth. They need to know that Isabella Luna is an opportunist who is using her sob story to manipulate everyone. Yamamoto wiped his mouth with his napkin and stood up. Señor Soto, I believe this dinner is over for us. Señor Yamamoto, please, allow me to explain. There is nothing to explain. The Japanese man spoke coldly. In my culture, respect for employees is fundamental. What we have just witnessed tells us everything we need to know about this firm. The investors quietly withdrew, leaving the partners at a table full of tension. Camila remained standing, breathing heavily. Perfect, she shouted. Now, because of that woman, we lost $1 million contract. Because of that woman, no. Javier finally exploded. Because of you. Because of your spoiled princess attitude that can't stand someone else getting attention. Camila looked at him as if he had slapped her. How dare you? How dare I? You know what, Camila? You're right. Isabella Luna is stealing something. She's stealing the illusion that we are better people because we have money. Ramiro tried to calm the situation. Javier, we're all upset. No. Javier turned to him. You know what I found out this week? That Camila has been using my name to close deals without my authorization. That she's been promising mergers and partnerships that I never approved. Diego paled. Javier, what are you talking about? He's talking about how he investigated me behind my back. Camila raised her chin defiantly. Yes, I used your name. Yes, I moved some contracts. So what? Someone had to make decisions while you were distracted playing social benefactor. Playing? Javier looked at her with a mix of disgust and sadness. Camila, we've been together for 3 years. I thought I knew you. You know me perfectly. You just never liked what you saw. Javier was silent for a moment. Then, in a very calm voice, he said, You're right, and that ends tonight. He turned and walked towards the exit, leaving Camila screaming his name in the middle of the city's most elegant restaurant. Outside, under the light rain that had begun to fall, Javier realized that for the first time in years, he felt free. A new chapter begins. 3 days after the restaurant disaster, Javier found himself sitting in front of his computer at 5 in the morning, writing and deleting the same paragraph for the 10th time. Beside him, A cup of cold coffee and several crumpled drafts bore witness to his internal struggle. Isabella had been absent since Monday. Karina had told him she had requested a few personal days, but Javier suspected Ramiro or Diego had something to do with her sudden absence. The rumor in the office was that the partners were preparing a dismissal letter. The official version would be staff restructuring, but everyone knew the truth. Javier finished writing and reread the document once more. It was a letter addressed to the city's most important newspaper, and he knew that once he sent it, there would be no turning back. At 8 in the morning, when Ramiro arrived at the office with his usual air of superiority, he found an unpleasant surprise. His assistant handed him the morning newspaper with a worried look. On the opinion page, with a photo of Javier Soto, appeared an article titled, "A Necessary Apology and a Pending Reflection." Ramiro read the first lines and felt his blood run cold. As a founding partner of Soto and Associates, I feel the need to publicly address an exceptional employee and society in general to offer a long overdue apology. Isabella Luna has worked at our firm for 3 years. During that time, my partners and I treated her not as the capable professional she is, but as a second-class employee whose only function was to facilitate our daily work. The scandal last week was not caused by Isabella. It was caused by our inability to recognize the talent we had in front of us. It was caused by our class arrogance, our social blindness, our comfort with a system that benefits us at the cost of keeping others in positions that do not reflect their true abilities. Ramiro rushed to Javier's office, but found it empty. His assistant explained that he had arrived early, left some documents, and had left without saying when he would return. Ramiro's phone rang. It was Diego. "Did you see the newspaper? Javier has gone completely crazy. I'm reading it now. This is a disaster. He's sinking us. Do you know how many clients have called this morning asking if it's true that we discriminate against our employees?" Ramiro continued reading. "Isabella Luna does not need us to defend her. Her achievements speak for themselves, but we do need to defend ourselves, from the moral mediocrity that allows us to sleep soundly while we waste talent due to class prejudices. Therefore, as of today, Isabella Luna will be promoted to Special Projects Coordinator, with the salary and responsibilities she always should have had. I also announce my temporary retirement from the firm's daily operations to reflect on the kind of company we want to be and the kind of people we want to be." "He's crazy," Diego screamed through the phone. "Special Projects Coordinator? He's giving her a position that doesn't even exist. Wait, there's more." Ramiro continued reading. "To Camila Vargas, who for years was my romantic partner and with whom I thought I would share a future, I say that love cannot be built on the basis of contempt for others. Her reaction last week showed me a side of her that I had refused to see. To my partners, I remind them that a company is not just a business, it is a reflection of our values as human beings. And to Isabella, I apologize for the 3 lost years, for not having seen what everyone else saw from day one. That you are an extraordinary woman who deserves much more than this place has given you." Ramiro dropped the newspaper. His cell phone kept ringing. Diego kept shouting through the phone, but he no longer heard him. Meanwhile, in a small downtown coffee shop, Isabella read the same article with trembling hands. Sophia sat across from her, observing every expression on her face. "What do you think?" her younger sister asked. Isabella slowly folded the newspaper. "I think it's very easy to write pretty words when you have nothing left to lose. Do you think he's not sincere?" Isabella sighed. "I think Javier Soto finally woke up. The problem is, he woke up 3 years too late." Her phone began to ring. Unknown numbers, one after another. Journalists, television producers, social organizations. Javier's article had turned Isabella into a symbol, whether she liked it or not. "Are you going back to work?" Sophia asked. Isabella looked out the coffee shop window. Outside, people hurried to their jobs, each carrying their own invisible struggles. "I don't know," she replied honestly. "I don't know if I want to be Javier Soto's redemption project." But deep in her heart, something had changed. For the first time in 3 years, someone had truly seen her. The question was whether that was enough to build something new on the ruins of the old. Her phone rang again. This time it was a number she recognized. It was Javier. Isabella stared at the screen for several seconds before deciding whether or not to answer. Finding true value. Isabella let the phone ring until it stopped. Then it rang again, and again. On the fourth attempt, Sophia looked at her exasperated. "Aren't you going to answer? I'm not ready for that conversation." But the phone continued to ring intermittently throughout the morning. Text messages, missed calls, even an email that Isabella deleted unread. 3 weeks later, Isabella had found some peace in her new routine. Job offers had poured in by the dozens after Javier's article. Some were clearly opportunistic, but others came from serious organizations that valued her real experience. She had accepted a temporary position coordinating a digital literacy program for senior citizens. It didn't pay much, but it gave her the freedom to do what truly mattered to her. Javier, according to what she had read in the newspapers, had kept his word. He had temporarily retired from the firm and was involved in several free legal education projects for low-income communities. Isabella had seen his photo in an article about a legal aid program in working-class neighborhoods. He looked different, thinner, less polished, as if he had exchanged his designer suit for something more real. The reunion happened by chance one Saturday afternoon at the book fair in the historic center. Isabella was at the booth of an independent publisher, browse a book on educational programs in Latin America, when a familiar voice said, "Is it good?" Isabella turned around. Javier stood beside her, dressed in jeans and a simple shirt, carrying a bag full of books.
Javier.
Isabella. They stared at each other for a moment that felt eternal. He looked tired, but there was something different in his eyes, a tranquility she didn't remember seeing before. "How are you?" he finally asked. "Good. Working on things I like." "I'm glad to hear that." Isabella closed the book and put it back on the shelf. "I read about your new projects." "Oh? What do you think?" "It's easy to be generous when you have nothing left to lose." Javier's smile faded. "You're right. But sometimes you need to lose everything to realize what you never really had." Isabella studied him. There was no trace of the arrogant man she had known in the office. This Javier seemed younger, more human. "Do you want to get coffee?" he asked. "There's a coffee shop nearby that." "I know the place." They walked in silence through the cobblestone streets of the historic center. The fair had filled the area with families, students, readers of all ages. Isabella observed how Javier naturally greeted some street vendors, how he stopped to give coins to a street musician. "How long have you been coming here?" Isabella asked. "A few weeks. Since I started the legal aid program, many of our beneficiaries live in this area." "Our beneficiaries?" Javier blushed slightly. "The program's beneficiaries. You know what I meant." Isabella smiled for the first time since they had met. "Yes, I know what you meant." The coffee shop was small, noisy, full of students and local artists. Very different from the elegant places where Isabella had seen Javier before. They sat at a table by the window. Javier ordered an Americano. Isabella chamomile tea. "How are things at the firm?" Isabella asked. "Difficult. Ramiro and Diego are furious with me. We lost several important clients after the article." "Do you regret it?" Javier considered the question seriously. "The damage to the firm, yes. There were innocent people working there who had nothing to do with all this. But writing the letter, no." "And Camila?" "Camila moved to Miami. Her family has businesses there. I think she needed a change of scenery after everything." Isabella nodded. She felt no satisfaction in Camila's downfall, only a kind of sadness for how unnecessary the whole conflict had been. "Isabella?" Javier leaned forward. "I know I have no right to ask you for anything after." "You're right," she interrupted him. "You have no right." He leaned back in his chair, accepting the blow. "But you can try," Isabella added softly. "You can try to be the person you say you want to be without expecting me or anyone else to forgive you for who you were before." Javier looked at her with something that might have been gratitude. "You know what's the hardest part of all this?" he said. realizing that for 3 years I had one of the most extraordinary people I've ever met in front of me, and I never bothered to truly see her. Isabella took a sip of her tea. Maybe you weren't ready to see me. Maybe I wasn't ready to be seen either. And now, Isabella looked him in the eyes. There was honesty there, but also uncertainty. Javier Soto was no longer the self-assured man who believed he had all the answers. Now, I think we're both learning to be different. And that's enough for today. They sat in silence, drinking their cups, while outside the fair continued its cheerful bustle. For the first time in years, Isabella felt at peace with the unanswered questions. Sometimes, she thought, new beginnings didn't come with fanfare. Sometimes they simply came as a quiet afternoon shared with someone who had finally learned to see you. Building a shared future. 2 months after that encounter at the fair, Isabella received an unexpected call. It was Javier, but his voice sounded different. Less confident, more human. Isabella, I know this might sound strange, but would you like to help me with something? Isabella was organizing materials for her digital literacy class when she answered the phone. Help you with what? The legal aid program isn't working as I expected. People don't trust us, and I think I know why. Isabella stopped what she was doing. I'm listening. We're still acting like we're saviors descending from our ivory towers. Could you meet with me? Just to talk. To help me understand what I'm doing wrong. Isabella looked out the window of her small temporary office. Outside, some of her older students practiced sending text messages on their new phones, laughing at their own mistakes. Where? How about the same coffee shop as last time? Tomorrow at 3. I'll be there. The next day, Isabella arrived a few minutes early. Javier was already there, but he wasn't alone. 3 people accompanied him. An older woman, a young man in a work uniform, and a teenager who couldn't have been more than 16 years old. Isabella. Javier stood up when he saw her. Let me introduce you to Dona Elena, Luis, and Andrea. They came to tell me why our program isn't working. Isabella sat down, intrigued. Dona Elena spoke first. Señorita Luna, my grandson told me about you. He says you teach computer skills without making us feel silly. You're not silly at all, Isabella replied. You're just learning something new. Exactly, Luis interjected. But when we went to Señor Soto's place about my problem with my boss, they made us fill out like 10 papers and talk to us with words we didn't understand. Andrea nodded. They scheduled appointments at 10 in the morning when my mother is working. As if we didn't know that poor people can't just miss work like that. Javier looked genuinely ashamed. That's why I invited them to talk to Isabella. She understands these things better than I do. Isabella looked at the 3 people and then at Javier. Can I ask you something? What would you need for the legal aid to truly help you? Dona Elena brightened. For it to be in the afternoons or on weekends. And in places we already go, like the health center or the neighborhood school. And for them to explain things to us like normal people, Luis added. Not like we're illiterate, but not like we're lawyers either. And for them to understand that sometimes the legal problem is just one part of the real problem, Andrea said. My mom needs a divorce, but she also needs a job and daycare for my younger siblings. Isabella nodded, taking mental notes. What if there was someone who knew both the legal problems and the other problems? Someone who could help you connect with different services. Dona Elena's eyes lit up. That would be perfect. Like how do you say it? A coordinator. Isabella smiled. Exactly. A coordinator. She turned to Javier, who had been listening in silence. What do you think? I think I need a coordinator, he replied without hesitation. Someone who understands both the legal and the human side. Isabella felt a tingle in her stomach. It wasn't the first time she had been offered a job, but this time it felt different. This time, she felt the offer came from someone who truly saw her. Are you offering me a job? I'm asking you to teach me how to do this right. The job is yours if you want it, but more than that, I'm asking you to be my partner. Partner. The program needs someone to make important decisions. Someone who understands the people we want to help. I can be the lawyer, but you would be the director. Isabella looked at Donna Elena, Luis, Andrea. In their faces, she saw genuine hope, not the false gratitude she had learned to recognize in so many well-intentioned but poorly executed social programs. "Can I think about it?" "Of course." After the others left, Isabella and Javier remained alone in the coffee shop. "Why me?" Isabella asked. "There are people with more experience in legal aid." Javier looked directly into her eyes. "Because in 3 years of working with you, I never saw you treat anyone as if they were less than you, not even me when I behaved like an idiot." Isabella felt something stir in her chest. "Javier," she began, "I know I have no right to ask you to trust me after everything that happened, but I believe that together we could do something truly good, something that matters." Isabella was silent for a moment, looking at her hands. "You know what's the hardest part of all this?" "What?" "That for the first time in my life, someone is seeing me exactly as I am, without projecting onto me what they need me to be, without trying to save me or use me to feel better about themselves." Javier extended his hand across the table, not touching hers, just offering it. "When someone finally truly sees you, you no longer have to prove anything else." Isabella looked at his hand and, after a moment, placed hers on top. "Okay," she said softly. "Let's try." It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It wasn't a declaration of love. It was something much more real and, for that very reason, much more valuable. It was an honest beginning, a legacy of respect. A year later, Isabella arrived at the office early, as she always did. It was no longer the small borrowed room where the program had begun, but its own space, on the first floor of a building in the historic center. The walls were filled with photos, graduations from digital literacy courses, families reunited after solving legal problems, children in student scholarship programs. The program had grown beyond what anyone had imagined. It was no longer just legal aid, but a comprehensive center offering everything from computer classes to entrepreneurship workshops. Isabella had insisted that everything be free and that the hours adapt to people's real needs. Javier arrived half an hour later, carrying 2 coffees and a bag of sweet bread from Dona Marta's stall, the woman who sold on the corner and had now resolved her pension problems thanks to the program. "Good morning, Director," he said with a smile, placing one of the coffees on Isabella's desk. "Good morning, People's Lawyer," she replied, without looking up from the files she was reviewing. It was their morning routine. Javier brought the coffee. Isabella organized the day. They had developed a working dynamic that worked perfectly because neither of them tried to be someone they weren't. "How are this week's cases going?" Javier asked, sitting in the chair opposite Isabella's desk. "Dona Elena will finally receive her full pension. Luis got paid the overtime he was owed, and Andrea," Isabella smiled. "Andrea decided to study law. Seriously, we got her a full scholarship at the public university. She says she wants to be like us when she grows up." Javier laughed. "Like us? Do you remember when we were boss and employee?" Isabella looked at him over the papers. "I remember when you thought you were my boss." "Touché." The door opened, and Sophia entered, who now worked part-time in the program while finishing her social work studies. "Isabella, the magazine journalist, is here. Should I let him in?" Isabella sighed. Since the program had begun to receive national recognition, the media hadn't left them alone. They had rejected most interviews, but this one was for a serious educational magazine. "Let him in." The journalist was young, enthusiastic. For an hour he asked them questions about methods, funding, future plans. But at the end, as always happened, he got to the personal questions. "You two have an interesting story," he said. "From conflict in the company to partners in this project. How would you describe your relationship now?" Isabella and Javier looked at each other. It was the question that always came up and that they never knew how to answer. "We are colleagues," Isabella finally said. "Friends," Javier added. "People who learn to work together," Isabella continued. "And personally?" the journalist insisted. "There are rumors that, personally," Javier interrupted firmly. "We are two people who decided that the work we do is more important than the rumors people want to invent about us." After the journalist left, Isabella and Javier organized the papers in silence. "Does it bother you?" Javier asked. "That they always ask about this?" Isabella shrugged. "At first, yes, but I'm used to it now. People always need to romanticize things to understand them." "What if it were true?" Javier asked softly. "What if there was something more between us?" Isabella stopped writing and looked at him. "Is there?" Javier seriously considered the question. "There's respect. There's admiration. There's affection. Is that enough to call it love?" "I don't know," Isabella replied honestly. "But I know it's real. And I know it's ours, no matter what others call it." Javier nodded. "I like our life just the way it is." "Me too." It was true. They saw each other almost every day. They shared meals, laughed at private jokes, supported each other in difficult moments. Javier had been there when Isabella got the flu. Isabella had been there when Javier received the news that his father had died. They didn't live together. They had no marriage plans. They didn't appear in romantic photos on social media. But they had something that many official couples never achieved. They saw each other completely. They respected each other deeply. And they had built something important together. The world remained competitive, elitist, unequal. But within their small space, they had created something different. They weren't trying to change the whole world. They were just living more honestly within it. And at the end of the day, when they closed the office and walked together towards the metro station, Isabella knew she had found something she had never sought but had always needed. Someone who saw her exactly as she was. And that, she decided, was enough. Did you enjoy Isabella and Javier's story? This tale reminds us that sometimes the most beautiful endings aren't the ones we expect, but the most real. Isabella didn't need a prince to rescue her. She rescued herself with dignity and strength. And Javier learned that true power comes not from money or social position, but from knowing how to recognize and value the extraordinary people around us. If this story touched your heart, give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to remember that their worth doesn't depend on the opinions of others. The transformation of these characters reminds us that it's never too late to change, to see with new eyes, to build something better on the ruins of what didn't work. If you want to keep reading more stories like this, full of real characters who face situations we can all understand, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any chapters. And now, tell us, from which country are you watching us? We love knowing that these stories reach hearts around the Spanish-speaking world. Leave your country in the comments.